So yesterday while I was working, I was catching up on some of the snippets from the Completely Unnecessary podcast, which hopefully you already know about. It's actually a podcast that Pat the NES Punk, who has a YouTube channel, does with his good friend Ian. And on YouTube, what they do is they take little snippets and sections out of every conversation they have. They're usually 4 or 5 minutes long, and they post all those snippets in video form on the YouTube channel. I'm going to link it below. It's an amazing podcast. He is a really, really smart guy. They're mostly like retro collecting gamers and that whole thing. Again, you probably already know about him in the podcast. What was interesting is when I was catching up on some of the most recent episodes yesterday while I was working, there was an episode that they had when they were at a convention recently and they had their podcast in front of a group of fans. And they touched on this topic where apparently, this is the only place I've heard of this, but these guys wouldn't really make something like this up. Apparently, GameStop had a conference call or an investors meeting call or something within the last few weeks. And apparently, it was very much noted that people from GameStop mentioned that Nintendo is indeed having cartridges as the actual gaming media for the NX, and that GameStop is excited to be working with Nintendo to facilitate the selling of their games. And I don't know how it was worded. I think that they said that GameStop will play a huge role in this market and in this media for Nintendo with their next system. Basically saying, the buying and selling of new and used games will be a part of what Nintendo is going to be able to do with this new machine because of the cartridges. So obviously this was a lot of information to hear and to take in, and it was actually pretty cool. I thought it was all great information. I was just so surprised that it didn't seem to be something that I noticed in any other outlets. I didn't see any articles or comments or YouTube videos or anything being made or written about this. This was total news to me, and this video was probably posted within this last week. If I can remember, I'm actually just going to link that video below, and then you can find Pat the NES Punk's channel from there, which again, I highly recommend that you subscribe to. Those are some cool dudes. So what does this mean that GameStop is saying, yes, it's definitely cartridges and we're going to play a huge role? Well, I think that I still am not taking this as the absolute confirmation that the NX is going to use cartridges, even though there are a lot of signs that point that way. We had a whole huge conversation and discussion about it on the podcast. I made a video about it when the rumor resurfaced a couple of weeks ago as well. It's very interesting stuff. It's very exciting stuff. There are a couple of negatives to the idea, but for the most part, I think most people are fairly unanimous in thinking that this is actually pretty cool. This could be great for Nintendo. This could be great for gaming. If they can set the precedence that, hey, we can go back to this kind of physical media, and it's a benefit for gaming and for gamers all around. But I just still can't take this as fact yet, even though this is another great sign to add to the category of, things that are saying that Nintendo might be going back to cartridges. But if in fact this were true, if in fact Nintendo is definitely going back to cartridges, and if in fact GameStop had this conversation and they confirmed it and they're discussing it and they said they're going to play a huge role, I think it's interesting because it kind of reminds us of a different aspect of cartridge gaming, in the sense that it'll probably help facilitate the physical and used games market and keep it alive for even longer. Now, I stress the even longer part because the sad truth of it, you guys, is that eventually we will be probably losing physical media for gaming and movies within the next maybe 10 years, I would say. This is, just spitballing a number. Sometime within that next 5, 10, 15 or so years, it's just all going to go away. And it sucks. It makes me very sad, but it's just the inevitable future. So we might as well enjoy the physical stuff while we have it. For those of us who love it, and I am one of those people, if you know me, I love it. I don't want anything to do with digital media. I appreciate, I appreciate DLC, but as far as like purchasing my games and my movies, I want them all physical. So with Nintendo creating cartridges, trying to bring, I guess, the cartridge and like the physical plastic, box games back into the console market. Obviously, the 3DS is still continuing it on the handheld, but as far as the console market, with them potentially bringing that back, I can see how GameStop maybe sees this as a huge opportunity to keep their business going a little bit longer. It's obviously for years and for 3 generations now, we've been buying and selling and trading new and used games for disc games too, GameCube games, PS2 games, 360 games, Wii games, PS4 games. Like, these generations with their discs have allowed us to still buy and sell. But because of the way disc games require, especially for the Sony and Microsoft's machines, they require installs, they require hard drives to be able to do this and that, and you can't save any data actually to the game itself. It's all saved on your machine or saved on the cloud to your profile, which is definitely cool stuff for a lot of reasons. Because of that, it does sort of make the discs arbitrary, and it's a weird truth and a weird fact when you think about what it is when you buy a game and you have like a CD, DVD, Blu-ray, whatever it is that you have in that case now. It's like you kind of really don't need it. Kind of like the way PC gaming started to get in the late 90s and into the early 2000s and the way it is now. It's like you don't even really need the physical game. It's all really running on something else completely different. You're installing the game onto your machine and its hard drive. You're accessing information from the cloud and from the hard drive, and you're downloading DLC and patches and all these things. And it's like the physical game isn't really accomplishing as much as it used to. It still matters to a degree when you buy it, yes, but ultimately, it's becoming more and more arbitrary where it's like that physical disc doesn't mean anything, and it's just kind of like a waste of time and a waste of space for a lot of people. Now, with a physical cartridge, things change because, as you know, a lot of the information that you're saving or you're running is coming off of that cartridge itself, and it can hold and store it and run it all faster and smoother. You don't need to install things to your machine. It's actually still on the physical game itself. Suddenly, that physical game that's in your hand, no matter what shape it's taking, suddenly that physical game actually has more merit and value in the real world because all of the game information and all of your save data and DLC and all these other things, all that other information is right there on the game in your hand. And what happens with that? Well, games have more value when you maybe go to something like a GameStop and you trade it in. So I really think this is one of the huge reasons why Nintendo might be trying to go back to cartridges, and why a company like GameStop, which it has built its entire business model around the buying and selling of used games, why GameStop probably gets pretty excited about the prospect. Now, of course, when you look at, disc-based, digital, or cartridge media, those three ways that we can play games, there's pros and cons all around, and there's ways to buy and sell and have advantages to all kinds of media. So it's not like the used games market only could be thriving off of cartridges. It's obviously been doing very well even on the disc-based games for a long time as well. So it's not like it has to be one way or another, but I do think that the value of buying and selling used games goes up with the cartridge kind of format. I think that that's maybe what GameStop was talking about on this conference call, whatever, investors meeting. I wish I remembered what it was, but whatever conversation they were having, I think that's why they brought it up, and I think that that's what GameStop sees. With Nintendo trying to come back really strong with the NX, change their branding, change their marketing, change their image, have better games, have more power, hopefully all these other things, I think that GameStop is seeing a huge opportunity, I hope. And wouldn't it be cool if what we're looking at is a partnership of sorts? I don't think it's going to actually be a partnership, like a signed kind of contract or anything, but I think that GameStop is probably saying, hey, we know that we're in this age where the physical game market and the used game market is slowly going away. Even if it takes another 10 years, it's on the decline. And so GameStop's relevance and ability to continue business as it exists is dying, potentially. And if you have a company, one of the huge, the three main players in the industry, as well as the oldest player in the industry, you have them trying to come back with this new console, and they're going to try to do this physical cartridge media that really helps facilitate the trading and selling of used games. I think that GameStop might be seeing an opportunity, and maybe Nintendo can also see an opportunity. And what if there's just I guess a gentleman's agreement would be interesting. I don't think that you're going to see this unprecedented partnership between GameStop and Nintendo. Then you're going to get into some weird favoritism territory, and I don't think that would be a good thing, so hopefully it's not that. I'm thinking something more along the lines of a gentleman's agreement, where GameStop says, man, we really want to steer the industry back in this direction that you're trying to go, Nintendo. We like what you're doing. We have a vested interest in keeping trading, buying and selling used games going, and your cartridge media that you're trying to bring back will help that. And so we have a vested interest in helping get the word out that this is what your machine does, and we think it's great, and it's smart for people to do this, and it's smart for you as a company to have cartridge games and this and that and the other. And so we're going to make sure that, we market and advertise heavily for the Nintendo NX and for its games. Typically the last couple of years, you go into a GameStop and it's hard to find Nintendo's stuff. It's like, where's the Wii U section? Oh, it's this 4 shelves stuck in a corner in the back, with like no advertising, maybe one like janky, dirty, ripped up sign that has some sort of game or something. It's nothing like what the Xbox and PlayStation sections are, and it's a shame, but it's become that way. Now imagine if if GameStop changes that philosophy, and suddenly they're doing huge pushes for Nintendo and the NX and Nintendo's products in all of their stores, and you get huge displays. You get a wide section for all of their games and all their marketing and coverage and their accessories and their branding, and you get just as much Nintendo branding as Sony or Microsoft, maybe even more as things go down the road. And again, I don't want it to get into favoritism territory. Yes, Nintendo's my favorite company, but I don't want it to happen unfairly, and I don't want it to be where GameStop does, honestly, to Sony and Microsoft what they've been doing to Nintendo. I mean, you could say, oh, that would only be fair. And it's like, yeah, but not really. I mean, it's not like Sony and Microsoft made GameStop stop advertising for Nintendo. That was GameStop's decision, okay? So it's not like and I don't want Sony or Microsoft to fail. If you know me, you know that that's not the case, because I love their machines. I love those consoles too. So I don't want it to be like they give the same shitty treatment to the other guys, because that's not how you fix problems like this. You make it even, or you keep Sony and Microsoft with the space and marketing that they get in their GameStops currently, and then Nintendo and the NX gets a different level of boost and a different level of attention. I think GameStop should see, as I said, a vested interest in making sure that a cartridge-based system, brand new next-generation console with cartridges in 2017, gets a lot of attention, a lot of press, a lot of coverage and visibility in their stores. And I think that might be what GameStop, the head and the CEO, whoever these people were discussing it, I think that's what they were getting at when they said GameStop will play a major role in supporting the NX. And that could be great, and that's great for Nintendo too. So not only is GameStop seeing an advantage of making sure that the cartridge-based system is successful so that there's more of a reason for people to buy and trade and sell used games, now Nintendo's like, wow, what a great way to make sure that we get this visibility and this marketing for our new machine, and people understand why it's great to play our games and to buy our machine and to play on cartridges and to do all these other things that Nintendo's trying to do. There's a huge win there on both sides. You guys, I'm not one of those people that's going to just poo-poo on GameStop and like, oh, they're terrible just because. Like, people say that because they're like the only guys, they're the biggest players in the used game market when it comes to a retail store. They're nationwide. They are the number one place people go. Even if you don't like them, people still go there because it's a place to sell games. If you want to sell games, to buy something else or get cash or whatever. And when you're so heavily known as the number one, company in whatever field, simply by I don't know, the law of average. I mean, people are going to be like, oh, you're the worst. GameStop's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And like, yes, their trade-in values sometimes are horrible. It's so totally true. But you know what? They're just a gaming company. They're run by idiots, but they're just a gaming company, and it's always a fun place to go. Whenever I go into a GameStop, I get excited. I find something to just blow money on or whatever. I think that it's great. I used to work for the company before it became kind of the bigger monopoly it is now, and I loved my time working for them. So I don't want to just sit here and say GameStop's the worst and they need to just go away or die. That's not fun. I don't wish the failure of companies, And it's a gaming retailer. Like, that's a good thing. We should want these things. So I want GameStop and the kind of business GameStop conducts to continue. I would like to see other companies that could maybe rival GameStop pop up over the next maybe 5 or 10 years. That would be great. Just like there's Walmarts and Targets and I don't know, all these other different things, used to be Kmarts and stuff like that. There could be a couple, Best Buys, all these companies that do a lot of the same things. There should be a couple for the video game industry as well, not just GameStop and then the occasional mom and pop store. And Buyback has been a dying brand. I don't even know what's happening with Buyback anymore. So anyway, in wrapping this up, I just think that this was interesting information that seems to lend credence to Nintendo using cartridges. I think that there's an interesting possible agreement or partnership happening where GameStop wants to give visibility and attention to Nintendo and the cartridge system and the NX, and Nintendo gets not necessarily free marketing, but they get a huge marketing boost that could hopefully only be good for the console and its success, especially when it's launching. So we'll see how this all plays out. Of course, we need to get the confirmation that the system's using damn cartridges anyway. For all we know, this whole conversation is for naught because people forget these things, they're not confirmed yet. It's seeming pretty likely, I agree, and I'm excited for this to hopefully be true, the cartridges, but we don't quite know yet. So let's wait and see how it all turns out. What do you guys think about this? What do you think about the NX using cartridges? What do you think about what GameStop and its CEOs or whatever kind of said about the cartridge thing in the NX and they're playing a role? Do you think my theory makes sense, or do you think it's something totally different? Tell me what you think. Share your thoughts below. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you guys next time on another video.